Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh here, and I have an awesome person on the show today, Nick McGowan. And Nick has done some awesome things. I had the privilege of being on his podcast, but we were talking and just reconnecting, talking about collaborating. I think we met in a networking group, and I thought it was awesome because we started to have so many different synergies, whether we're talking about entrepreneurship, podcasting, life at that. We even talked about playing cards and things like that, how those things start to synergize. So I guess to kind of kick everything off, Nick, I want to have a phenomenal conversation with you. But for people that don't know, could you tell us a little bit more about you and what your background is?
Sure. So, hey everyone, I'm Nick McGowan. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, and podcaster. I know that a lot of times people can like riff about like I do all these things and all these, but those are about the core components of what I do. I'm excited for you and I to chat today to talk about thought leadership, podcasting, entrepreneurship, really living authentically without that being a stupid buzzword and something that we actually do that makes sense to us and that we want to be here. And you're right. I think we did connect through some networking thing, almost like one of those, like, all right, let's have a 20-minute chat and see if it makes sense for us to ever talk again. Some of those become awesome friends, just like
Right.
lifelong friends. And I think that was like maybe 3 years ago at this point, dude. So we've talked a lot since then. And I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I really loved the most was that we kind of had that synergy around digital marketing. I think you had started a digital marketing company and had that experience, but I would love to hear more about that. But definitely, like when you talk around thought leadership, like what does that look like for you? Like how are you defining that? What exactly does that look like?
Well, thought leadership, I think, can look different for different people. It's really being the thought leader to what makes sense to you to talk about. So, a little bit of a step back. It's funny to me how words can mean different things to different people. I had a boss at a company years ago who was literally like in a line of like 7 or 8 bosses over a 2 year period at this company. It was wild. Like they'd bring people in, be like, go do this thing, and then just kill them off. And that was the end of that. This lady had said thought leader over and over and over and over to like nauseum, where it was like,
Mhm.
I remember being in meetings and like poking a friend in the leg every time she would say it. And he was like, stop, stop. So for the longest time, I thought of thought leader as something negative just from that connotation, but never really thought about what that looked like. Took a bit of a step back, did a lot of my own internal work over the past, let's say 20 years, but a lot of concentrated work into deep subconscious work, changing limiting beliefs, even my winning strategy, and trying to figure out like what is important for me and why am I here? Like, what's the purpose of life? And started thinking about thought leadership again. My partner and I have talked about it a lot. She has a business where she works with people specifically on theirs as well and their purpose in life. And the more that I look around, people are trying to be a leader about what they think and what's going on and what matters to them. And I think a lot of this ties into the timing where we're at in the world. Like, look, you and I are podcasters. We couldn't have been podcasters in the 80s.
Right.
We couldn't have been podcasters in the 1880s. We couldn't have done anything on anything electrical at that point besides maybe some electricity in your house for like an hour or two, whatever that was back then, you know? So there's the timing of things and how things are set up for us to either use them appropriately or not, just like a lot of the stuff that's happening right now with AI. Um, but I think people are trying to be a thought leader in what matters to them on social media or being a podcaster. When I started the podcast, it was out of sort of selfish and selfless reasons, but mainly selfish because I wanted to have conversations with people. I wanted to talk about these things. I wanted to heal. I was also doing some coaching and mentoring, and I couldn't really have the conversations that I was having with those people sort of behind closed doors out in the public. But being a podcaster, you're able to do that and share my thought leadership. So I think a lot of people are trying to do that online and just in their business. They're trying to show, hey, I'm competent in what I do and I have ideas and I have thoughts around it. So I know it's a kind of a long-winded version of like what that means, at least to me. But I think there are many components and pieces to it. So back to what I said, where I think it can look different for different people. For me, that's podcasting. For somebody else, it may be putting together presentations that actually show their way of thinking and feeling about a situation and then maybe putting that in front of somebody. Likewise with an artist, their thought leadership could be their paintings, their music, or something like that, and how they speak through that. I mean, from a music standpoint, as a musician, there are things that I can't actually verbally say or write out or text that I could feel just from some bridge of some song or something along those lines.
Nice. I absolutely love that definition, and I think that's such a huge thing, and especially to simplify it to say whatever you can lead as far as like what you're thinking about. And I think when we start to simplify it, sometimes that thought leadership can seem like it's on this high plane that we don't know how to reach. We don't know what it is and what that looks like. But I think if we simply look at a lot of those things, probably potentially that we're putting our quote unquote 10,000 hours to and things that we've done, then I feel like that might leave at least a seed or at least an idea of what we could be potentially thought leaders on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think of all the breadcrumbs throughout life, even with our conversations and how we met, um, and just how life has shifted from that over the past couple of years. Your business, my business, just how things have all grown and shifted. You follow these little breadcrumbs. I think to take a little bit of a step back and a step kind of internally for all of us, it's to be able to figure out actually what's driving us and separating from the systems of what's driving us. Like the world tells us we should go to school, we should get a job, we should get married, we should do all these things, like all the shoulds. There's a systemic things that are happening, but then there are the things that are deep inside of us that just move us, that are unshakable in a sense. Like we can't move them, but they will move us. Like creativity is that for me. I have to create in some sort of way, even if it's something small throughout the day. I've learned that about myself, but I also pushed that off for years because society and systems and everything else told me, well, the way to get ahead is go make all this money and do all these things. And you do that. And then you go, well, fuck, this kind of sucks. This doesn't
Mhm.
actually feel accurate to who I am. So to tie that into thought leadership as well, it's us actually taking a step back and going, well, what is it about these things that I'm doing that makes me feel something out of that? Now, I also understand that on the Enneagram, I'm a 4, and I am really feely. I'm basically
Mhm.
an emotional diva at different times. And there are people that are the logical ones and really heady and think about things before they feel or if they even feel at all. And that's totally fine. It's us understanding how we work through this world and how we work best within it and being able to understand that for us to then go, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do. Like when I was a little kid, my dad's a thinker. He's
Mhm.
always thinking. He's using his brain constantly. And I was always feeling. I have to feel first before I do anything. Like that intuitive feel. I do that often for dinner. Like, what do I want? Thai, sushi, Mexican, that Thai. Man, that's where first thing, you know what I mean? Like I have to feel that. But as a kid, my dad was always telling me, think, use your brain, use your brain. And it took me into my like, I don't know, mid-30s to go, yo, pop, here's the deal. I have to feel before I think. But I get that you're different and that's how you are. But that's part of the system of things. We're raised by parents who tell us to do these things. And then we go, oh, this is what it should be. Or these adults that I trust are telling me to do this. And I guess I should go that route. So we've got to be able to kind of take inventory of this stuff and separate from it and go, well, what is actually driving me and making me excited to do this thing? Even in the smallest of things. If you're in a career or you're at a job and you're doing what you're doing on the daily, go, well, I don't like all of the nonsense or whatever, but man, when I sit down and I just go through an Excel sheet, there's something about it. And it's not that you're infatuated with Excel, but it may be the organization of it and how the data works. And so I'm saying all that to be able to understand how we think and how we feel and what drives us, but then to take that deeper and say, well, what are those pieces about that? Because then we can follow those breadcrumbs and go, I really love this sort of stuff. Like I realized as being in sales for 20 plus years, being on my own, running giant teams, building companies, and doing all these things in sales, I was like, I really just love to communicate. But I don't want to sell anything to anybody. I just want to communicate and help and work through things. So that's kind of a tangible way to look at it. the people that are in sales that love to have conversations. It may be that you love to, it may be that you actually really love problem solving. So what if you could put that in use with your other passions for the environment or for helping people or like we talked about before, sports cards? Like, what do you
Yeah.
do with those sort of things and why do you enjoy it? So I think kind of mixing the thinking and the feeling with all of it, but us understanding deep inside, like, why am I doing this thing? Is it systemic? Is it internal? Is it a mixture of both? And actually doing that deeper work to figure that out, because I think at that point we then can uncover what's actually there for us to do on this planet. And not only why we're here doing that, but how to go about it, which can tie back into that thought leadership and even podcasting, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that just because I feel like podcasting ends up being like one of those modalities
Yeah.
that you get to use to be able to kind of communicate and get those your words, your message, whatever it is out there. But I think one of the things we had talked around a little bit too before we hopped on, or the time we connected before, I should say, is around that entrepreneurship. And I've always felt like entrepreneurship equals hope. I feel like a lot of times if you don't know how to get over that wall or you don't know how to get through that wall or whatever it is, sometimes if you're able to use your problem solving brain and think outside of the box, whether we're talking about politics or starting a business or
Mhm.
podcasting or whatever it is, it opens up so many opportunities. So I would love to hear like a little bit more, on your journey, your connection with entrepreneurship. How did you get into this place where you can start to figure out how to solve those problems? But I think what you touched on, one of the words that really stuck with me is like do it in an authentic way, do it in alignment with who you are. How have you been able to do that?
Lots of experiences and lots of uh, deep inquisition to understand, like, why have I done these things? I think there's also a couple major things like I've noticed for myself, getting into
Yeah.
long-term relationships really makes you do a lot of work in
Yeah.
beautiful ways. I was married for 8 years. I've been with my partner for a number of years now. And we just, we as people need to do life with other people. But there's not always the times where we have to do things the way that other people tell us to. But getting into those long-term relationships or getting into a career or something like that, anything that there's a length of time to it that's coupled with you actually deeply caring and having a tie to it, then you're able to see these things more often. And even if it's not as clear, you're able to become more self-aware to be able to see, oh, I really have something here I need to work on. Or hey, I really love this thing. Like even just from the simple point of I really love being loved, or I really
Mhm.
love caring for people. And again, going back to, like I said, understanding why you do that. Is that because you had childhood trauma? Like you care for people out of, you just want to be safe. And if that's a thing, then you become aware of that and go, oh shit, I thought I was just loving on people. But in all reality, I'm loving on people to make sure that I stay safe and I can keep them in front of me because something that happened when I was, 5 years old or whatever that is. So being able to understand those pieces to it and then understanding what do we want to do within the world can help with the entrepreneurship. So when I think of entrepreneurship, and I think there are a lot of people that can like toss the word around, um, it's really, I believe the definition is basically like you make money in different ways. Like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. It's not just having a job, this is the money you make. But I want to touch on this real quick. I don't think entrepreneurship is for everybody. And I don't mean that as a slight. I don't mean that as like they couldn't do it because they probably and most likely could, but it's not always the right thing for those people. So those people that maybe are the caregivers of the world, um, from a healthy perspective and not out of like trauma or something like that, those are typically great people to be able to work with the entrepreneurs, because sometimes entrepreneurs can be um, very visionary, but it can tie into what can look like neurodivergence of ADHD. Sometimes it is ADHD, things of that sort. But there are people that, just like being on a team, they're going to pitch that idea and then other people need to help with that. So I think there are people that are trying to become entrepreneurs right now that are just actually dissatisfied with where they're at or what they're doing right now. but are kind of in that right path. Like, you get what I'm saying with this?
Yeah.
There's like those levels. Like, think about team members that you have. Some of them could probably be great entrepreneurs, but their jam is really being part of that team and not having the additional stresses of stuff like the systems of things and the finances and how do we keep the lights on for everybody and just all of that sort of stuff that ties into it. But I think there are people that will look at entrepreneurship and say, this is really what I want to do because really I'm dissatisfied. Almost like the grass must be greener on the other side because it's brown and dead here totally and like nothing can grow. Maybe you just need to be in a different spot. But again, back to the beginning of it and understanding, why are you feeling that way? What are you thinking about it? Is there something that's even happening at home or in a different aspect of life that just making you look at all the other stuff instead of just saying, well, I want to do this, I want to do that. Think back to 2020. Everybody was in a real rough spot, entrepreneur or W-2 employee, or the people that were hybrids and all, trying to figure out what do we do? And that's one of those tough moments to be able to figure out what's actually going on. I don't want us to go through a pandemic or anything like that again. And I, of course, don't want anybody to go through craziness in their life. Sometimes, you learn from getting fucking punched in the mouth. You go, okay, all right, cool. Note to self, you know, um, so I just wanted to touch on that because I know there are people that will listen and be like, I want to do this, but it may not be the right thing for them right now, and not to force themselves. It may also be the right thing. Like, you may be in a spot where you're like, I don't want to do this because I could do it better. I've learned a lot. I want to do this. And my God, I want to do this for a deep internal purpose. Then go after it. And those breadcrumbs that we leave and have left throughout all the different situations and experiences we've been through, we can then look at them and take inventory of that and go, what did I learn from this? What did I learn from that thing that can help me on my path to do this? And then being able to take those little steps and not creating some crazy reality. But I also grew up where my dad was an entrepreneur and my mom, they weren't together. My mom worked two or three, sometimes four different jobs, supporting us. I watched my dad struggle in his own ways and have his own successes as an entrepreneur. But I kind of look at like the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, Robert
Yeah. Robert
Kiyosaki. I
Kiyosaki.
kind of had
Yeah.
like a rich dad, poor mom sort of scenario. Um,
Yeah.
but they both did what they could with what they had and still had their limitations. They had their mental limitations, physical limitations, just all the different things. But when I stepped back, I could watch them make those changes, the adjustments, the missteps, like we learn a lot from our parents. And sometimes it's like, oh, note to self, don't do that. But being
Yeah.
able to see from other people's experiences, I think, is what it ties into. And watch them both grow through the things. So again, entrepreneurship may be for you. It may not be. And it may just not be right now because there's more stuff for you to go through. Um, so I learned that as a kid, like they're going to go through stuff. I watched my dad make a bunch of money, watch my dad not have money, and watch my mom make some money and not have money. And like, having a big house to go to and a tiny ass apartment to go to. And it's like the perspective of those things can be important, but it's deeply important for us to understand. Like, I thought my pursuit was to make a bunch of money. It was like, well, Pop made a bunch of money, so let me go after that and let me actually do him one better. Like, let me try to top it. That's not how it is for me. I've pursued that. I've made bunches of money. Didn't do anything at all, like at all. I had my brother a few years ago. I told him I was leaving the company I was with and I was doing my own thing again and like whatever. And he was like, why are you going to leave a 6-figure plus cush job that lets you do whatever you want? I was like, because I hate it and I hate myself for it. He was like, cool, bro, go after it. And I think a support system like that can help with these things as well, but it depends on the person. So again, back to the beginning of this, of understanding how we as people are operating and want to actually operate and what's moving us. And it should get bored at the situation that I was at or go, oh, I made the things I wanted to. I knew there was something deeper. And that was, oh, it feels like mountains ago. of work that was done after that to be able to continue where we're at. And I'm nowhere close to where I think I will be at some point, but also not trying to pursue billions of dollars and crazy fame because there's really no reason to any of that. For me, it's us pursuing depth, our internal and understanding, just like my podcast is the mindset and self mastery show, understanding how our mindset ties into all these things. And self mastery is heightened discipline in my book and how we're pursuing that. But we have to pursue that within ourselves to understand, does that work with entrepreneurship? Does it work in the job that I'm in? Does it work out of the system of working within jobs and capitalism anyway? Like, do you just want to be on a farm somewhere and just raise goats? That's still totally cool. Like, what do you want, you know?
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful thing, and I think I shared this with you even on every conversation we have. From the first time, I think we had a very powerful conversation. You left me with a book. Can't remember the name of the book,
Last
but I
word.
was like, "This is a phenomenal book." And after reading it, I was like, most people say, "Hey, you should pick up E-Myth. You should pick up this. You should pick up that." This is the book I had no idea about, and it completely changed the way that I look. But you have this ability to have that introspection and that ability to kind of understand these things, and the word that kind of came up for me was this word of journey, whether we're talking about entrepreneurship or life. And as you said so well, is that a lot of times, whether we're talking about relationships or even business, like I say, as much as we build the businesses, we don't realize that we're building ourselves in the same way. And we can look at marriages, we can look at relationships, we can look at co-founders. All those things are quote unquote hard. And
Mhm.
when you go through the challenges of that, not only are you building that, you're building yourself as well too, and revealing a lot of that. So I guess for you, and how have you been able to um I don't know if that's something that you've always had, or you feel like that introspection or that ability to kind of see the forest for the trees and see all the things is something you've been able to cultivate. Like, where has that come from, or where and how have you been able to kind of sharpen that saw even more?
I think it's a mixture, and it's also a lot of cultivation and voices over and over and over again. I think about the people when I was younger that were my mom's friends or dad's friends or like friends of friends of friends or like people came over to the house for parties and they were just adults. God, they probably could have been like 28, but as a kid, you're like, they are
Yeah,
hella
been
old.
ancient.
Like, how do you even fucking move? Um, but watching how people were, I remember thinking as a kid, like, huh, what choices did you make to get here? And
Yeah.
good and bad. Like, there were people I met where I was like, "I saw what you drove in and based on television, like, that's a badass car," and whatever else. It's like, what choices did you make? So even now, I'll drive past people's homes or see some crazy awesome thing, and I'm like, I wanna what do they do? But it's not from a perspective of like, "How did you make the money?" Like, "What do you do for job?" But what is it that you do through life and how does that work and how did you get there? Similarly to like the question you just asked me, like how did you get to this point and what are you doing? um I think there are clues, like somebody had said years ago, success leaves clues, and I enjoy those little quips every once in a while. There are certain ones that are like so poignant. Like that is one of those things, if you really look, if you're self-aware and you're aware of situations and you're looking for things, you'll see more within it than may meet the eye. So over the course of life, I've always asked a lot of questions, lots of questions. I used to piss my parents off so much because I'd be like, well, why? What about this? What about that? I'm sure all kids do stuff like that, but there would be times where they would just have had enough. They'd be like, because I said so. And I was like, that doesn't compute and incorrect. And why would you say such a thing? And like whatever else they look, it gets so grumpy. Um, but I've always I've always tried to figure out what's going on in the situation, and I've learned over the past, I don't know, let's say 3, 4 years that there's been a lot of that actually came from trauma, my childhood trauma.
Mm.
There were situations and things that just happened too quick, too soon, too fast, all at once, and things that were physically, mentally traumatic, and those will shape us. And those stories will become just the way that we live. So there have been times where I've asked questions about things similarly to like the a painting that I painted a little earlier with saying, well, I do this because I really want to keep you in front of me. I'm not the service type in that sort of way. I've known people that are like that, but I had figured out that I can ask certain questions and I can do things in a way that will keep you in front of me, and I can see where we're going to go with this, and I can control as best I can to not be left in pain or unloved or what have you. But getting back to that has helped me then kind of reverse engineer from there and say, well, what do I do outside of that? And seeing, so the book that I told you is Last Word on Power by Tracy Goss.
Yeah.
Total life fucker. Like it just fucked me up, flipped me inside out in a beautiful way. Cause what I'm talking about right now is a main component to her book. It's the winning strategy. It's the subconscious winning strategy that we develop as little kids in our formative years to say, oh, this is how I stay safe or loved or away from being abused or what have you, or whatever our core wound is. And mine is to not be to not be lovable, to be abandoned. And I figured out a strategy that taught me to do things to help with that. Fast forward decades later, it's so ingrained, we don't even know that we do it. People will say it's part of our character and what we are, and they're just such a loving person, or they're such a grumpy person, or whatever it is. And that's not actually true. That's just a symptom of this strategy that was developed that is subconscious and running the way that we operate. We don't even think about it. So when we start to actually think about that and get into that work, we can then start to uncover, I didn't do that at 15. I didn't do that at 25. I didn't even do it at 35. It took me to 38 to learn about that, to then go, wait a minute. I've got to look back through every single thing to kind of take inventory of life and go, why do these situations happen this way? And be able to tie it back to that strategy. But there were a lot of things that were part of that strategy I had, and I still have it. We as people will always have that. It's about being aware of it and saying, well, sometimes I can use that. Sometimes I can say, fuck you, like get away from me. Um, Being able to understand how those pieces have led to different decisions and the way that I've handled life, I'm able to do more of that work. So being able to look at the situations of, like I said, I've been in sales for a long time, and I thought sales was the thing. Sales was a vehicle to help me make lots of money because I thought that was what it was about. And the reason why I kept with it for so long is because I really love to communicate and I love to have conversations, which ultimately led me to mentorship, coaching, consulting in different ways, and the podcast. But it took me getting to the point of understanding my subconscious winning strategy to say, oh, there are a lot of ways that I was doing this, because then I was able to keep myself safe. And how do I understand that now and also talk about it? So see how that also ties back into thought leadership. Like the more that we can understand those things and the makeup of us, we can then do something with it and share that. Um, and not just like, oh, I learned this thing and I just posted an Instagram reel or whatever, but like actually embody that and deeply go after that. So on a little bit of a, I don't know, a twig off of his branch, I'd been suicidal at different times. I'd attempted at different times. And a number of years ago, finally got to the point where I was like, I fucking can't stand this. Like all of this sucks. The world sucks. I don't want to bring kids in this planet, none of this stuff. Understanding ultimately what I was getting to was I'm tired of fighting within the systems and fighting against myself, to then understand that the more that I can do deep internal work and that I can start to become more of myself and I get back to the internal me, things will start to open up more. And at one point it hit me like, well, fuck it. If I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. Like suicide's off the table. So if I can't take myself out of the game, might as well play the fucking game, but I'm going to play the game my way. Some of that was learned as a kid with the entrepreneur in my family and the entrepreneurs in the family and just how people operated. But also a lot of it really came from, this is part of my mental makeup. This is part of my spiritual and soul makeup. And because trauma and different things had shaped me, I can then look at those and say, how do I and what do I do with these things? And do I even want to? And does it make sense to go on this path? But starting to walk and then see those breadcrumbs. So it's interesting to me how a lot of stuff just really ties together. Like, I'm not trying to just tie every single thing back to the last thing, but it all is intermittent, but it all works within the way that it works. It's like all these little jigsaw puzzle pieces. And once we see those, we can start to put it together. Like, some people will look at puzzles and they're like, give me a corner and I'm off to the races. Other people are like, I need a glob of blue so I can move along because I can see it on the image or whatever. You got to understand how you do that to then start to do it. But then you still need to start putting the pieces down and then fuck up and go, well, this piece looks like it works. You know what I mean? And be like, all right, well, let me try it again. And we can kind of chuckle about it because we've all been there. Like, we've all been like, oh, I know this one works. Like, this is definitely it. You start to do it and you're like, well, I fucking said, like, just get on there. And we do the same thing in life, but sometimes it takes a lot longer. Like, you might go through that career or be in that job or be in the relationship or whatever and go, oh, well, this really isn't what I want. Or I've been doing these things because I thought I needed to, but in all reality, what actually aligns with me and feels right to do are these other things. So it's figuring out that internal work to it. And if you are an entrepreneur, like you and I are, and we have been for a long time, and I step in and out of different gigs or I've had different jobs at points, and like, it's just life. There are opportunities that come up, and then you do something with that or you don't, and you learn something from it or you don't. And at some point you will. Like, you get it and you go, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I think those little like God nods in a sense where it's just like, stop. And you're like, oh, all right, cool. Note to self. I had a situation that happened last this year, the beginning, let's say beginning part of the year. Somebody was waving a bunch of money and they're like, you want to help with this thing? It's similar to what you've done in the past, like all these easy things in a sense, and here's a bunch of money for you. It's like, yeah, cool. I'll help with that. I want to do it out of good a good thing to myself that felt aligned to do. But then I actually uncovered that there was more work that needed to be done internally because I was still trying to scratch some of those itches from that subconscious winning strategy. As I started to see them, it was like fucking whack-a-mole. I was like, fucker. Well, all right. I see it now. Like, note to self, cool. And we'll sometimes have to go through that. And I bring that up because people can look on social media, they can listen to things, and people will talk kind of a great game with stuff because they're here, they're showing up. Like, this is the best that I look, and like, this is the best that I do, and like, blah, 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 all those things. But no, reality, like, each day is just each day. And your day is your day. And whatever you want it to look like, just do it. And if it can't look like that right now because you have these responsibilities or these things to do, either in your business or in somebody else's or whatever, it's starting to do some of that work, but at least a little bit, and giving yourself some rest as you kind of move through it and seeing the things that are coming up and feeling the things that are coming up to say, all right, well, there's some work to be done there. So like you'd point out, man, like the amount of work that you do within your business that you're actually working on yourself, or you're working specifically on the business and like it's tying into different things. One of the things I enjoy about you is that you are self-aware of that because you see that. And you also do more of that work because you see it. There are lots of business owners and entrepreneurs that they're still stuck in that system of, I'm going to go make as much money as I can and I'm going to do all these things. And they're just doing the mechanics of it and either quickly or slowly burning themselves out. Um, and it's wild the amount of stories I hear on my podcast or people I talk to where it's the same shit. It's like, I did these things, followed the system, made a bunch of money, had this, had that, and none of it fucking mattered. Now what? And you're like, okay, what do I do from here? Because the world told me this is what I wanted, but we also keep telling you, like, this is not what you really want. Like, what you really want is what you really want. Like, even if you and I were sitting here telling each other, like, man, based on what I know of you, this is what I think you want. You might go, all right, man, I get some of that. That's kind of cool. I appreciate that. But it's not really true. Not all of it, because I only know bits about you. I mean, your closest family and everybody else knows bits about you. We're all like that. There's some people that will share a lot, and there's some people that are super just conservative with their energy and just what they share to people. That might come from trauma. That might just also be how they are. But we are the only ones that know this stuff. And we're the only ones that continue to do that work. Just like with podcasting, I hope that people listen and go, huh, maybe there's this thing, or maybe I should talk to somebody, or I do have some questions, even just to yourself, like sitting on the couch and being like, huh, or sitting in the car while you're middle of traffic on the highway, listening to us yabber on about things, being like, well, yeah, well, really, do I want to go to this job? Do I really want to go to my office of my company? Or what is it? And just continuing to ask those deeper questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key word that really stuck out for me is that word deep, and where we're talking about deep work and things like that. And I think so many times the way to show up authentically, whether we're talking about content or in life or in our business or whatever it is, or in our 9 to 5, whatever it is, I think you kind of, I feel like it's so easy to get lost in the sauce, so to speak. It's so easy to fall into that system, to fall in, I should be doing this or I should be doing that, because that's where everything's pushing you towards. And it takes a lot of, I don't even know if you have to, like you spoke to this so well, you don't have to find yourself. You almost have to re-uncover yourself for
Mhm.
yourself, because all these shoulds get in the way of like who we are, our alignment, our authenticity, like all those things that you have to almost like rediscover those things, whether it be trauma or things that happen, you have to, kind of go through that process. But I think once you have that discovery, you start to realize that maybe it's not what everybody else said that you should do, or, checking that box or checking this box. But I think too, if you're aligned and connected with that and you find peace in that journey, you also know it's going to evolve and change. So I feel like, as you said, day to day, month to month, year to year, you start to realize, like, I did like that in the beginning, but I don't like that so much now. It's not
Yeah.
quite doing what it did for me 5 years ago or yesterday. And I think you start to have more, I don't know if it's peace around the journey as a whole, which I think is a really powerful
Yeah.
place to be, because you take it a step at a time.
Well, the more healing that you do and the more, I think, understanding that you have of yourself, situations, even systems, like once you start to learn about systems, you can't not see it. And I remember my partner told me that a few years ago, and she was like, let's talk about systems thinking and being able to get deeper into that. And it's like, oh my God, it's everywhere because everything we're
Yeah.
in, there's a system of all these things. And it makes sense. It's very mechanical. Like our organism of our body is a system. Like there are all these little systems, and there's even subconscious that we don't think about breathing. But I've breathed, I don't know, a couple thousand times already, just in this 48 minutes or whatever it's been. And we're not really thinking about it. Um, so there are these systems that are in place, but also understanding once we see those, we can then actually do something with it. One of the things I've noticed with people I work with from a mentoring perspective, even people I help with their podcast or to be a guest on other people's podcasts, or even just the podcast guests that I've had, the self-awareness component to life. Once you become aware of something, you can't not see it. And if you do, there's some blockage or something that's going on. So I think once you start doing internal work and continue to do that work, you'll see more and more and more. Like I go through deep subconscious processing sessions, typically a few hour long sessions. Like they can be grueling at times. That's because the work needs to be done. It needs to get down in there. You need to actually work through it. You need to process through it. You need to heal from it. But that will often uncover other things. Like I went into a subconscious processing session, I don't know, a few months ago, and I was like, this is the thing I want to work on. 10 minutes in, we were headed in a different direction. And I ended up in some image in a garage with my dad and a wrench. And like, oh, that tied back to all this other stuff. But I thought I was coming in to talk about this thing, to do this work. And showing ourselves grace and being able to just work with that. Like whatever starts to come up will start to come up, which then ties back into, I think, how we're kind of formed on this planet, at least at this time, to say, well, you're supposed to do these things. Life should look this way. Like situations should look this sort of way. And that's not how it is. And being able to find patience and grace within those moments is real fucking easy to say and super difficult to do, especially for myself. Like patience has been a four fucking letter word since birth. Um, and there are components of that that are from trauma. There are components of that that are just part of my design and my energy and the way that I move through life. Um, and they can be good, bad, indifferent, like all the different things. It's really just an interpretation of me saying, well, oh, this is this way. But in all reality, it's understanding deeper, like, oh, this is how I move with these things. And I really don't like when people get in my way. Just from the perspective of I want to continue to move. So get the fuck out of my way. Um, s- on a little bit of a side note, we have a vehicle. It's an SUV that we love. We call it the Rig, and we have a, a novelty plate on the front that says "Move Over." My partner sent me a picture of somebody else's vehicle like a number of months ago with that on there, and within I don't know 90 seconds, I'd already ordered one because I was like, "We need that." Um, and it's worked at times. If not, they just get like the point of me pointing down at it. And I've laughed to her, laughed to myself, like, look, I'm not trying to beef with these people. And I'm not trying to go 180,000 miles an hour. Just like, yeah, we're in the fast lane. Go at least 70, 75. Um, but I understand about myself. The reason why I bring that up is that I want to continue to move. I want to experience. I want to explore. That's part of my energy. I just keep going. And I know as a generator that I have all this energy throughout the day and I'm supposed to go to bed completely exhausted, but not exhausted because I'm fucking burnt out. And I've learned that over the course of time. And the easiest way to say that I've learned it is because I fucking burnt myself out. Like I've just been
Mm,
so fried because of all those other things that I was doing that was actually using energy, but zapping my energy because it wasn't really aligned with what I felt deep inside of me, I wanted to pursue. And that I want to call out that there are different buzzwords and stuff like the authenticity, alignment, all these things. Like, we don't mean this shit to be woo woo or anything, but in all
right,
reality,
right.
we're all frequencies. And if you can vibe with that frequency and you can connect with that frequency, you can also attract that frequency. Just like misery loves company. That's the fucking reason. So, for us to be able to start to understand more about ourselves, we'll then start to see these different things. So I realized at one point, like my purpose is straight up to find self mastery within myself and potentially be an example for other people. Like I don't pursue this to go like, I want people to look at me and go, oh, look at Nick McGowan doing all these things. Like, don't care. Don't want you to do that, in fact. But there are so many times I hear from people that are like, "Oh man, I saw you did this thing," or like, "I heard this thing on the podcast or whatever, and like maybe think of this thing. And now I'm doing this, and like go check this out or whatever." Like, awesome. It's a little bit of a catalyst just from fucking living as close to what I can live to within my alignment right now today. That will change tomorrow because we're constantly evolving and learning and unlearning and adjusting. Or at least I like to think that we all are. I know we at least all have the potential to do that, but there are things that'll stop us. The systems of it all, the traumas and stuff that tell us don't do that. The people that were afraid to do their own thing that they weren't going to be an entrepreneur. And then you told them you wanted to start a business and they said, oh no. And all the shit reasons why. It's on us to then go, okay, well, I don't believe your shit reasons and I don't really want to. And I want to pursue this because I feel it deep inside of me. But in that scenario, if we look at it and go, well, fuck you, I really just want to make a lot of money. We got to sit down and think. And we got to work through it and understand why are we doing these things?
Yeah, I love that, and it always goes back to like being able to kind of ask those questions. Those why, just
Yeah.
like the kids saying, "Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that?" And it's almost like as you start to go through the process and the steps, and you start to realize exactly, what those steps look like. You have to make sure that you are, are measuring, you are doing the things in the beginning, the deep work that we talked about. And I think there's some quote, and I can't remember who exactly said it, might be like Abe Lincoln or something like that. Is like if I would have had more time, I would have wrote a shorter letter, or if if I want to cut something, I'm going to measure twice and cut once rather than cut twice and measure once. And those things about doing that due diligence kind of in the beginning to make sure that you are where you are, but realizing that mastery, that process never ends. You're always going to be striving and chopping at the tree and making sure that you're able to do that. So I think that's beautiful to be able to kind of see that come to fruition. So I'm really curious around, we're talking a lot around the journey, what that looks like, the things that you've been able to kind of take in and go from there. Like, what led you to podcasting? How did you get there, and what do you do now to kind of help people from that perspective?
So it's interesting with how I got to podcasting because I pushed off for many years. And again, it was a selfish thing, but selfless. It was one of those weird situations where it's like, I can see both of these. Like, there are different things we do as people, and like, you're making a selfish decision. And even if you're not telling us you are, if you're really fucking honest with yourself, you absolutely are. And we do it. All of us do it. And there are other times where you'll do something selflessly and then go, well, really, it's because I wanted this thing out of it, or whatever it is. Like, if we're getting real, and there was one of those things where I felt like that was part of my purpose, to be able to have these deeper conversations in more of a public light and allow that to just really grow myself, the other people, audience, et cetera, et cetera. And I had no idea. Like, when I first started the podcast, I was like, I hope that at least the guest listens to it, like, I'm going to listen to it. I want to have the conversation, and I hope one other person gets it. And I still say it to people. I'm close to 200 episodes in, and everybody I talk to that's on the show, I've probably said it to you, even like, if nobody gets anything out of this besides one person, we've totally been a super success with this, because that's all that matters. And now at this point, I figured roughly about 1,000 people per episode that listen to the podcast. It's 1,000 human souls. Sometimes I'm sure there are more. Sometimes I'm sure there are a bunch less. They're still human souls that are listening. And I would hope that there's something that comes out of that. But it's all our own journey to be able to figure out, what is it am I getting with this information? What do I want to do with this information? So in 2021, I got a divorce, and it took probably 3 years, 4 years to muster up the courage to be able to ask for it, but also to do a lot of work within that time to understand that that was the right decision to be made. And I can look back now and go, oh, well, maybe we could have cut it and like been X amount of years shorter than that. I'm like, yeah, but it didn't. And I had to go through it. She had to go through it. We had to work through it, and like all that stuff. And I, from there, was like, oh, well, I guess I'll become a coach, because I've been having conversations with different men. And then I went through a crazy situation where like one guy led to another that was like, hey, my buddy's going through shit. Can you talk to him about some stuff? And like, just started to become a
Mm,
thing. I had different conversations that were uh, real surfacey, like, not to throw men under the bus, but a lot of men have a hard time naming their emotions, and
mhm.
also being vulnerable, even if it's from like a little bit of a deeper surface level. Like, if you introduce me to somebody, or I introduce you to somebody, there would be a little bit of a warm handoff, because they know us and trust us and go, cool, I can share maybe a little bit more. I noticed that there were men that were like kind of cool with that, but they were giving me like canned lines of things. We'd get a session or two in, and they would start to really open up. And I'd been sexually abused as a child. That's part of my smorgasbord of childhood trauma. Um, and had different men that I talked to that went through similar, or, something of that ilk. And it hit me at one point, like, I can't use that for marketing. Like, back then, I was trying to do everything with social media. I owned a social media marketing company years before that, and like, still thought social media was the place to grow a business, which, news alert, it's fucking not. Um, but I thought I could share that stuff. And there was one time I was sitting there on my couch, and I was like, I can't. There's no way I can share any of that. Like, you
Yeah.
can't jump online and be like, oh, so I talked to somebody, and they told me that this person did this thing to them. And like, blah, 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 blah. It's like,
Mhm.
no, you can't at all.
Yeah.
That is one of those things I don't think you should, at least. Um,
Right.
but I thought, how can we have these open conversations in an open space, where not to just like have somebody out themselves with things, but to be able to potentially help other people, because that's really what I was trying to do. That's why I wanted to share on social media. And that's why I wanted to share it with people that there was a podcast, not just be like that dude that's like the guy that I remember growing up that was like, you want to hear my demo? You want to hear my demo? You want to hear my demo?
Yeah,
It's
my
like,
mixtape.
no, yeah, you want to hear my mixtape? Like, fucking no, I don't. Um, I knew I didn't want to be like that, but I also knew that that is because that made me feel gross and like you're trying to push something where really I just want this to organically grow and help the correct people, like the people that are there, like the teacher will show up sort of situation when the student's ready. Um,
Mm.
and I I thought, wow, maybe I could do a podcast, but that only came after thinking, well, maybe I can turn this into something much more, what I thought was legitimate coaching and create a whole system and do this group. And I paid a coach thousands of dollars to basically tell him like, fuck off. I don't want to do what you're telling me to do. And that's cool. Like now I'm one of those people that paid a bunch of money to tell them like, nope, that doesn't make sense to me. Um, and I went into podcasting from there. But I had a cousin years before that who told me, dude, you need to be a podcaster. You need to have a podcast. Like you can talk, you do all these things, blah, 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 blah. And I just didn't for a long time. And there were points where he would just text me the word podcast. And I was like, man, stop, you know? Um, but then it came back and I was like, oh, this is the opportunity right now to start this.
Mm.
And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what to do. So what's the first thing I do? Well, what do I want to talk about? All right. Well, do I really want to talk about that? And like, it took me maybe 2, 3 weeks of just being by myself, going to the gym, working throughout the days, doing whatever and being like, what am I thinking with this? What am I feeling with this? What do I want to do? All right. And here's my plan. And here's what I'm going to do. And I got to a point where I talked to a couple consultants because I was like, maybe I'm going to ask other people, what do they do? And the first question I asked is, how did you fuck up? How do I know? And they'd be like, oh, you do this, you do that, or whatever. And still, the first episode I had, my microphone wasn't fucking on. So it
Yeah,
sounded like I was
been there.
talking in the bathroom, like awesome. But being able to continue to grow from there and evolve with every single piece of it, content, the topics, the discussion points, the guests, the diversity of guests, the types of people, the different echelons, the different parts of the world that we have conversations from, all of those different things. But it all started from just taking those little steps. And I've remembered different times as like present and sort of future Nick, back to past Nick being like, ah, man, I remember being past Nick is like, this sucks. I want this thing to be done now, or I want this right now. I want this. And then being able to look back at the journey of it and being like, oh my God, even if that happened, everything would have derailed, or I wouldn't have gotten to this point. Like if I didn't get a divorce, if I didn't pay that coach a bunch of money, if I didn't start having conversations with people, which led to other conversations, and I didn't have a cousin who was on my ass at different points about starting a podcast, and podcasting wasn't a thing, technology wasn't a thing, I wouldn't have met my partner. I wouldn't have gone through the healing journey that I've gone through. I wouldn't have cracked wide the fuck open 2.5 years ago. And I wouldn't be on a conversation with you right now. I think that's a beautiful thing. And you know what? I couldn't have fucking planned it when somebody asked me in 11th grade, what's your 5 and 10 year plan? Fuck if I know. And even if I did, I don't want to do it. Like, that's probably not the best option. You know what I mean? And just
Yeah.
taking those little pieces. So I really think all of it ties in together, at least the way that I look at this, because I see how it's happened. I'm 41 years old, 31, 21 years old. I wouldn't have thought these things. I wasn't there. And I still needed to go through all these different pieces. There are moments now where I sit here and think like, man, there were seasons that sucked. Seasons that I wanted death. And seasons that I can look back at and go, it sucked that I went through that, but I am excited to be where I'm at because of that. And even with the craziness and turmoil and shit that's happening within the planet, where it's like finding contentment within being here with what we've gone through to then say, all right, well, what do I do today? And have a little bit of an idea of like what we want to do in the future of things, but just taking today, like we really don't know. Like we could get off this call. I could walk out and I don't know, get hit by a fucking meteor. No idea. Could also live to be, I don't know, 119. No clue. I don't actually know if I want to live to 119 the way that everything's going right now. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful place to be, and I think that even biblically, it talks a lot around even your trials and tribulations count them as blessings, just because they put you and they sharpen you, they deepen you for the race that you're ultimately going to run. And I think when you start to kind of look at it from that perspective, it helps out tremendously, I think, in terms of saying, like, I stubbed my toe here, I stepped in the sand here, and all these things that happen. If that hadn't happened, then I wouldn't be where I am. And there's this whole thing going around social media. I don't know if you ever seen it, like the concept of burnt toast,
Mm.
and the whole idea of that. If I hadn't left the toast in the toaster too long so that it burned and had to get another piece of toast, then I would have got in an accident because I would have been 5 minutes ahead of where I would have been. So it's like this whole concept of, like, even the frustrations that we have in life and the things that we go through actually could protect us or get us away from
Mhm.
the other things that happen, or it might offer gifts and opportunities that we never would have thought of. So I think that's such a powerful place to be, because you start to be a lot more um in this place of embracing what's happening rather than trying to as much control it or say it needs to go this way or it's done. And I think that's a really powerful thing to do. So I wanted to drill down a little bit more. I know you touch base with people that are looking to start podcasts or potentially looking to be on more podcasts, and you help them out from both of those vantage points. So I would love to hear just some nuggets and some information that you can kind of share with those people that are or think that they might be thought leaders, and how to go through that process and how to get on more podcasts or start their own podcasts.
Yeah. So I'm totally biased when it comes to podcasting at this point because it makes so much sense to me as me because I communicate and because the best way that I communicate is verbally and it can be on video and audio. But for somebody who writes incredibly well and that's the way that they communicate, podcasting may not be the best thing for them. It could still be a really great thing, but may not be the first thing that I would suggest that they go to. So as a thought leader, somebody who's like, okay, I want to actually talk about this and I want to continue to pursue this topic, this genre, whatever it is, understanding ourselves is really important. Like I've had different people that they're like, I want to be on a podcast and said, well, why? Well, I've been told that I should. All right, cool. Now that that's out of the way. Why do you want to be on a podcast? I want to talk about these things. Well, whatever. We can go through all of that to ultimately understand that somebody really loves to be able to write. And it's like, well, why don't you shift toward a book and actually get all of that out in writing? And then we can also couple that with podcast interviews and turn this into more of a strategy. So I've been part of agencies. I've had my own agencies like better part of the past 2 decades. So it's hard to not think from that perspective of like, how do we use these things? But it's also, it allows me to actually look at it and go, all right, well, I can see the different ways to be able to use it. The question is still why. It's like knowing the basic language. Then you can say, all right, I hear it, but context here. Like, give me the context, or what's the purpose, or what are we doing? So, I think there are two different pieces. If somebody wants to be a podcast guest and they have something they want to talk about, book, service, all the things that they want to do, and then there are the people that want to actually start a podcast. So, for those that are wanting to be more guests onto shows, it's really understanding what it is that your thought leadership is about and completely getting rid of trying to sell anything. Everybody I talk to on my show, I tell them this is not a promotional show. People don't give a fuck about your books, your service, anything unless they can connect with you. Because think about it from your own perspective. If there's somebody that you want to buy something from or a thing that you want, it has to answer a question for you. It has to scratch an itch for you. It's not specifically about those people. So being able to understand what we want to talk about, what we're here to talk about, and then understanding from the perspective of the podcast host, why would they want you on the show? What would their audience get out of this? And what actually makes you different than everybody else? One of the things that I think is a really awesome, easy fucking takeaway for people is when you're doing outreach for podcasts to be a guest on, make sure that you include a few things. why you think it matters for you to be on the show, what you can do to help with the audience, some references. It blows my mind. I probably get close to, I don't know, 50 messages, emails, DMs, all that sort of stuff over the course of each month. Some months are heavier, some months are less. Like right now it's summer, so it's a little less, but September, I'll pick right back up. Um, I get so many emails and messages from people that don't have those components to it. And it's like, I don't give a shit who you are. If I can't actually know who you are or what you're about, I don't care what your words in your email are saying to me, or I don't care what messaging you're saying, and I don't care about their following. I need to know, does it make sense to be a guest on this show to talk about these topics that can give some value to the audience that trusts and respects me, and therefore will automatically trust and respect you. So specifically, if you're reaching out to people to be on their show, make sure you send some sort of reference link. And if you've never been on a podcast before, tell them that. But tell them the reason why you think it makes sense to be on their podcast and what your thought leadership is about and how it matters from your perspective can matter to that audience, because that's what matters to us as podcast hosts. Like, you didn't ask me to be on the show because you thought I would be a total train wreck, or you didn't ask me on here because you're like, oh, well, maybe Nick will pay me money at some point. I don't know. I'm pulling things out of the side, but like the reason why you've asked me on is there's something valuable to talk about. And you think that your audience would get something out of this. That's the reason why I do it. And that's the reason why other people do it as well. And even if it's everybody, all the different podcast hosts have their different reasons, whatever, that's still a main component of what we do when we look at guests coming onto the show. Does it make sense? Do I want to have a conversation with you? And is the audience going to get anything out of this? And what can we do to make sure that those are the most important people? It's the audience. And then for the people that want to be a podcaster, they want to have their own podcast. Really understand, why do you want to have it? If it's egoic, like I really just want to do it because I want to say I did this thing. Like some people do that with books and businesses and like everything else. Okay. If you can go deeper than that and there's an actual purpose that feels aligned and like you could bring something to the world, great. If not, and you got to that point, then turn around, do not start a podcast. For the people that actually want to have a podcast because they feel that this is a great way, just like you and I did, to be able to share a message and also share other people's experiences and wisdom, and be able to have deep conversations about whatever topic it is. It could be sports, it could be politics, it could be mental health, it could be whatever it is, whatever drives you. Then start to figure out from there, what do I really want to do with this? I don't want to give a bunch of tactics of like how you go about setting up a podcast and what software you use and all the talking points and the outline you need for your show notes and how you distribute and all that stuff. Because truthfully, none of that matters if you don't know why you're doing it and what the purpose is for you to be able to do it. And again, from a strategy and marketing perspective, we need to know what our core topics are. And we also need to know what we're actually doing with it to then be able to formulate things around it. If we don't know what we're talking about to the podcast, if we don't know why we're doing it, then everything else is a total crapshoot. I learned that early on. I knew that I wanted to talk about mental health. I knew wanted to talk about being on a lifelong journey. And then it hit me, mindset, self-mastery. I was like, that's cool. Could run with that. And then started to do more research and keyword research specifically to figure out what's the best things, what makes the most sense. So literally mindset, self-mastery, and transformation. And as long as things couple within that, or like part of the clusters of that, then we can have those conversations. I get different messages from people that makes no sense why they reached out. Like, zero sense. I don't get it. Others, it's spot on. So from a podcast perspective as a host, understanding what those core topics are and then what the peripheral topics are will then allow you to be able to understand, who do you want to have on the show and who do you need to deflect or suggest, hey, maybe you're better on somebody else's show, or no, it just doesn't make any sense. I had somebody reach out recently as a so I get a lot of authors, PR firms and stuff like that. I think you hit a level where it's just like, cool, you're here. You want every one of our authors to be on your show. And there are some where I can totally tell, like, this email is beyond canned. Like, especially when it says, hello, the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm like, hi, I'm Nick. Nice to meet you. Um, it was like some horror book. And I think the protagonist had some psychological issues. So that was the hook. They were like, cool, that makes sense. Let me reach out to the Mindset Self-Mastery Show for this horror psychological thriller to be on here. And I was like, this makes zero sense at all. But it takes being on both sides of it, like being a guest to understand how do I position these things, what do I talk about, etc. And being a host to understand what do I want to actually talk about, who do I want to have on the show. But right back to the beginning of all this stuff, it takes us, to understand what we want to do with it. Like if you want to have a podcast that talks about your day job because you feel that'll make you more money, then you're probably just going to burn yourself out, even if it's a slow burn. But if you're doing it because there's some part of your day job or the company you have or some hobby you have that really drives you and makes you super excited and you could just talk about to nauseam for some other people, then that's at least somewhere you should start smelling around and figuring out where do I want to go from here. The thing that I did right up front, maybe not the first like 2 weeks, because I had to figure out like, what do I want to talk about? Who do I think, or what would this show be? Blah, blah, blah. And like just stew on it a little bit. But I reached out to people and asked, what do you do? Specifically, how did you fuck up? What do I not do from here? How do I set this thing up? What softwares and like, how does all this shit work? I'm a big proponent of that. And that's also why I do mentoring for this, for people that want to start a podcast or be a guest. And there are services where I could do implementation, research, and that sort of stuff. It also really depends on what that person wants to do. Like, so if somebody's like with me, I was like, I really enjoy the editing. I'm an audiophile. I've been in agencies for a long time. I haven't done all like the video and audio stuff at agencies because again, I'm a salesperson and a communicator. So they were like, go sell shit. Um, but doing it all on my own, I really enjoyed that. So that was the thing that I didn't need help with. I've tried to have a handful of different people over the course of the past few years. Typically, I'm like, cool, just give it back. I got it. It's not worth it, and I want to do it. And like, there are different things and whatever. But understanding that about myself was a component to it. There are other people I talk to who are like, I just want to show up and have a conversation. I literally talked to a guy the other day who was like, I had a show 8 years ago and I want to do a new show, but I've learned from the 8 years ago that there's this, this, and this that I do not want to touch. These other things I'm
Right.
totally in for. It's like beautiful. Because then from there, we can figure out what's the best strategy to support somebody to either be on a show and why they're doing it, or to start their own show. And again, why they're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a powerful phrase and powerful words and nuggets that we can kind of use to kind of help implement. Because I think on both sides of the coin, you want to make sure that you're asking that why, and drilling down more and more and more and more and more to make sure that you have exactly what you need. So, Nick, I appreciate you so much and giving us so much great, valuable content and information and being so open and honest around sharing your story. But I wanted to kind of hand you the mic to see if there's anything lastly that you want to kind of leave us with, something powerful that we can kind of take away to make sure that we're using it on our podcast journey or frankly on our life journey at that as well.
Self exploration. I mean, I have the mindset and self mastery show because I think mental health, mental wellness is a major component to our life, and self mastery is a pursuit. There have been different people over the course of the podcast that told me you can't just mindset yourself through life. I'm like, totally understand. It's a piece of it. And others that have said self mastery is not a destination. I don't know why they all sound grumpy, but it's typically all through text or like email or whatever. Um, and I agree with that. It's not a destination. It's all about a journey. And the more that we understand that it's our journey, but we also have a lot of information coming at us in all the ways that sometimes we're not really aware that we're being infected by those different pieces of information, social media, the news, just going out to the store, seeing signs and like whatever else. So understanding that there's work for us to do, but it's a actual pursuit of us to do that work and just take it each and every single day. It can be really difficult for somebody like myself who has a real hard time with just being patient and how things are at times, but understanding more about ourselves, we can understand where that comes from. I understand that there was a lot of that for me that came from childhood trauma, and then different things that were just energetically that I want to continue to move on a thing because that's how I best work. People will plan specifically around things. I have to really just start fucking around and find out. And that'll open up different doors and move through there. That might be right for some people, might be totally wrong for people. But we can't listen to other people tell us this is what's right for you because they don't actually know that. They can. It's on us to be able to figure that out. But it's on us to be able to keep taking those steps. Like, I'm sure somebody's going to listen to this and go, well, yeah, I hear all that. But I've been through these different things and I'm still just fucking sick and tired of where I'm at right now. That can be true and still simultaneously work alongside of helping you on that path because we've been upset. We've been super happy and joyous at different points of life. So it's about actually keep going with that sort of stuff. There are people that have been on my show that have said kind of that is one of the last things, because I always ask, what's your piece of advice for somebody on their path towards self-mastery? The keep going thing, the self-awareness thing that comes back. But it makes sense because it's true. Like, the more aware you are of these things, you go, oh, I'm really upset. Why? The fuck is it? Like, oh, well, this thing's been nagging in the back of my head and has nothing to do with anything that's happening right here, right now. And being self-aware of that. And then from there, being able to understand it's our own journey, nobody else's journey at all. And it can be so much easier said than done. But if you're aware of it, you can start to catch those things, or you go, oh, I'm trying to do this because whatever the reason is. And I do think as part of purpose, and our purpose in life is communal, but that doesn't mean that somebody's purpose is to be the next Steve Jobs or an Oprah or something like that. It may just be to be the best parent you can be, or the best partner you can be, or just the best version of you that you can be, because the world fucking needs that.
Absolutely. And that is such a powerful thing because I always say if you run your own race, you can't lose, but you have to know what your race is. You have to be able to run it no matter what's pulling you in the same way. And Nick, best way for people to get a hold of you, to have those conversations, find out about podcasting, all of those things, what's the best way for them to do that?
Easiest way is just go to the mindset and selfmasteryshow.com, because that's got my information on there. It's got stuff about the podcast. And that's the best way to go through it. We're on social channels and stuff, but in all reality, not a huge fan of social media. Use it as more of a testing ground at this point. But the Mindset and Self Mastery Show, you can catch up on all the episodes, more info about me. And there's also info about podcasting services and how it can help with thought leadership.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Nick. Of course, we're going to have the link and information in the show notes as well, too, so that everybody can follow up. But Nick, truly appreciate you so much and taking some time out. Like I mentioned, the authenticity to be able to share your story and your journey has been such a powerful thing. I imagine just for you, but also I feel like it gives everybody else permission as well, too, to be able to go through the journey, to do the self-mastery, to do the hard work, the deep work that is required to kind of get to that next level. So I appreciate you so much, my friend, and I hope you have a phenomenal rest of the day.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on, Gresh.